A quick thank you to the T5 peeps, Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Cat Crab Lobster, DuckMachine, Astraya the Dreamer, Mezec, Feudic Jarl, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos2Mist. Thank you very much. Story number 1. The Penalty, written by LordsOfJoop. We were pinned down and could practically feel the edges of the enemy vibra rounds begging to drill through our armor and bodies. Yet still, we prayed for salvation, rescue, or the end of it all. For months, nearly a year, the fighting had been rising to a fever pitch, moving from skirmishes in the forests and jungles to outright slugfests in the city streets. And we could not surrender nor escape. Our fight was not born of an urge to reign, but to survive. As invaders go, the Deny could fight like demons and knew it. Our people, the Clathai, were far more fragile, both in autonomy and in temperament. Yet, that was our homeworld, and the last bastion of our people not scattered to the distant colonies and relief ships. A single Deny was firing down the hospital corridor we were trying desperately to secure, and with that objective robbed of us, all we had left was to cover the retreat of no less than 80 of our wounded, young and infirm, taking the odd shot through the softer cover at the far end and praying for a solid strike. Maybe one round at 100 could be said to be a hit. 1 in 3 proved to be a detriment to something more substantial than paint. Yet the Deny battle doctrine against us hadn't changed, not even when we received weapons from the many smugglers who had been charging us an extortionate rates for just barely above average gear and deeply limited support. It hadn't changed when we paid a generational loan to the Agro for electromagnetic pulse bombardment, determined to reduce the Deny comnet to a minimal radius at nightfall. And all we could do was hope, against hope, that we had one last chance. When I heard the short, dull thud after the wailing shriek, I knew that we'd just lost one of our medics. They were shorter, those Terrans, yet they fought valiantly, when, of course, they chose to fight. Once declared as pacifists, nothing stirred them to rage nor battle, as they stuck to their principles with a devotion like nothing we observed. Then we heard the scream. It ripped through our comms, helmets, and very souls, and still it rose like a fireball, engulfing us in a misery and drawing us into its own. And then silence reigned. The gunners who had been shooting at us had just done something beyond stupid. So far beyond stupid, it could not be justified in front of most lenient or lax of judges, and no judge would be found then. Only judgment. We heard the medic's mate, a much smaller frame containing them, rose up from the cover provided by a water reclamation unit and held aloft the dead partner, their steely mask reflecting only the warped sunlight beaming through the thousands of holes in the wall, roof, and floor. And the first step felt deep and difficult. Then another, and still it walked, sobbing silently, chest rising and falling, ignoring the sudden burst of concentrated fire upon them. The exceptionally durable armor of those medics. It was a Terran design, with one engineered weak point, the red cross-shaped pattern at the chest and helmet. A quiet dare and a promise. If this was penetrated, the deal agreed upon ends immediately. The Deny had just realized what they'd done, and it was already too late. The idiotic marksman had aimed intentionally to drill a hole through the medic's helmet, and by extension, head. We all saw the Deny commander, a brute we called Butcher, dragging his subordinate into view, a hand cannon pressed to the throat of the gunner, and announced that he was punishing him for his insolence and begging for mercy on the others in the platoon. A single vibra round neatly cleaved off the gunner's head at the neck, and still, the human was walking forward, though the sobbing had abruptly stopped. The human marched and was not dissuaded by the begging any more than it had been troubled by the weapons fire. Rather, It then set the body of its mate atop the dead Denai gunner and stared down at the commander, leaning forward and into the proximity of the much taller creature. One finger held up, then moved in a circle, the universal sign of 1 standard hour. Then the human picked up the chunk of metal reinforcement and drew a line across the dusty floor, gouging it until its narrow border was visible to one and all, then angled its head back towards where we were huddled, and then back down to the line of the floor. A silent message delivered. Cross that line, something bad will happen. The denying commander, a skull-faced brute of a creature, could only nod, his armor reeking of a biological discharge normally done in private, face streaked in terror tears, and reversed course, soon joined by his fellows, retreating from the corridor. And that was when we heard the voice of the medic's mate announcing magical words on the comms net, all frequencies, all channels, audible to the Denai and the occupants of our homeworld. Medic down, Sector 55 Delta, 3rd floor. Request evac from Denai occupied space. 1 hour of clemency requested. Medic 653 Alpha Sigma, clearing channel. All across the world, I knew guns were stilled, silence, and soon irrelevant. Medics from the human collective who joined the fight would turn to the nearest group of Denai, regardless of that group's size, and arm themselves. Their armor, adaptive and strong, would reinforce those weak points automatically, and the end of the soft spot would arrive, and the terror would begin. Medic 333 Delta Echo reporting, I'm at Artillery Station 62 Sector Nexus 9, readying to begin battery bombardment of all Denai-occupied zones, clearing channel. The world darkened. Medic 195 Charlie Bravo reporting, I'm at Wing Support 3 Launch Zone, Sector Nexus 5, readying drones for fleet launch and targeting all Denai masses, clearing channel. I had no idea how many medics were serving with us, though I could count the hundreds of reports coming across the comnet, each of them announcing proximity to some military asset, means of transport, or just their presence, reminding the Denai they were in a world of war, and they had just roused the warlords of all. For 10 generations, the humans had practiced peace. They did so to become good at it. The Denai forgot that the humans had long ago mastered war. That lesson was soon taught, and they could not help but learn it. It takes weeks, sometimes months, to empty a world being occupied, and the Denai, despite motivation, found that it was not enough by far, far too much. On this day, the 110th anniversary of the exodus of the Denai from this, their own heartland world, we say this: we are closing the military academy which saw us through the same war, and are opening a new school, one which is our new inspiration and focus as a species. We have excellent teachers. We will become medics, and we will join them. To those who see the red cross we will wear as a target, we ask that you consider the question, have you learned the lesson? End of chapter. Story number 2. Four Bears Day, written by Rosie013. Daniel stared down at the crappy coffee mug in his hands with disgust. He proclaimed "World's Best Dad" across it in large letters. That was it. Black and white, no decoration at all. It wasn't even particularly well manufactured. Although in all fairness, at least it was in the correct shape for drinking out of it. It had that going for it. It was cheap and personal consumerism at its best. Show your progenitor appreciation with the least effort money could buy. So he did the only thing he could. He put it back on the shelf with the others that were all for sale. It was overpriced, anyway, along with everything else that the overly bright advertising was trying to draw your attention to. T-shirt with the same slogan, just as impersonal. Chocolates, sure, but they aren't really the right son to father gift. Comedy barbecue apron, maybe, if anyone he knew actually used them. Shopping for gifts was always painful, and leaving it until the last moment doubly so. Daniel realized that he was overthinking this. He knew his father, what he liked, just not what he wanted. The rest of the store would help him clear his mind. Distraction somehow always made making decisions easier. Walking the aisles of kitchenware and electronics to ease his overthinking. It all came down to the barbecue spices and rubs mix, or the only half-tacky whiskey tumbler. They were both adequate options for his time frame, despite the cheerful advertising boldly claiming that they were exactly what your father would want. To everyone. So painfully impersonal. Dad wasn't much of a drinker, and at least the spices would get used. That was it then. Decision made. Walking back to the highly advertised section in the front of the store, Daniel grabbed the first spice kit he came in reach of, and noticed the item hidden behind, where some other shopper had discarded it in the wrong place. It was a coffee mug, a black and white, barely any decoration at all. It wasn't even particularly well manufactured, although, in all fairness, it was at least in the correct shape for drinking out of, and had that going for it. And it had the silhouettes of 4 bears across it, for his forebearer. It was awful. It was perfect. Dad would get a good laugh, and it would become a treasured artifact from which to sup his beloved hot chocolate from. There was no reason to second-guess the accidental discovery, and Daniel snatched it up with pride at the crappy, father-quality joke and headed to the checkouts, mass-produced and overpriced spices absent from his thoughts. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video.